Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So good morning again. It's nice to see so many of you here. Special welcome to our retreat guests. I hope it's been a valuable retreat and you learned something that you can take with you that helps you in your life. For those of you who don't know, I'm Reverend Oswin. I'm one of the senior monks here. I'm a disciple of Reverend Master Jiu. He established this temple and founded our order as our larger collection of temples and people who train together. And in this talk, if I refer to our founder, that's who I'm referring to. I want to talk this morning about always going on. This is one of the most valuable teachings that I received, that I learned from Reverend Master Jiu. I don't know if it's the most important one, and if you talk to other people, they may have others that they feel are as important. It's not the only important thing, but this is the one that I found particularly helpful over the years and continue to find helpful. I talked with the monks a while back about this, so I hope they'll bear with me if some of the material is they've heard before. Okay. It's said in Buddhism there are two pillars. There's compassion and wisdom. Okay, you need both. This morning, the ceremony for Avalokiteshvara, you focused on compassion. Probably to a great extent. This is one of our biggest ceremonies, and as you can see in the hall, we pulled out all the pictures and statues, and it's to make the point that compassion is everywhere, and that includes within ourselves. Sometimes I feel we need to put up a long mirror, in one of these, just to make the point that, you're compassion too. I'm compassion too. So for this talk, I'm going to talk about wisdom. I'm going to talk about the other pillar. And you may wonder, well, what does always going on have to do with wisdom? Well, in my experience, whatever wisdom or insight I have, I've received from always going on. Okay. So I found over the years that you can cultivate compassion. You can make an intentional effort to cultivate compassion. And at least for me, wisdom grows by itself. It's something you can't manufacture or even, I don't know that if you can cultivate it. But it grows if you keep up the practice. If you keep up your meditation, that grows. All of a sudden one day you wake up and go, that was a wiser decision than I usually make. Or you just find something kind of nudging you in a way you might not have noticed before. It grows slowly. It's like a dimmer switch on a light. It comes on slowly usually. The phrase, always going on, comes from the scripture of great wisdom. That's the scripture we do every morning. That's a part of our always going on. We do that every morning, even if it's a rest day or we're ill or visiting family, or that's our practice, is to keep, at least as monks, to keep doing that every day. It's considered the most important scripture in Zen or the meditation tradition. And it's not just us that do it every day, but all, from what I understand, all meditation or Zen temples do, and it's used in other traditions as well. Why is that so important? It's important because it's trying to point to that which is greater than us and yet resist definition. We use lots of words for it: the unborn, the eternal, that which is. Compassion is an aspect of it. But this particular scripture is saying, well, it's not this, and it's not that, and it's not this. It's no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. It keeps taking everything away from you, so you can't conceptualize, you can't grab onto it with your mind. And then at the end, you get what we call a mantra. And that's a distillation of the scripture. And it says something positive about what's sometimes called emptiness. Going, going, going on beyond, and always going on beyond, always becoming Buddha. Hail. Okay. So in a way, the essence of wisdom is always going on. We use this particular translation of the mantra at the request of our founder's teacher in Japan. He felt it was very important that we use this in a positive sense. Okay. Some translations say gone, gone, gone beyond. Translating it as going, going, going on beyond makes it something that we continue to do. Even after Buddhahood. There's writings by our Japanese founder Dogen on training beyond Buddhahood. We don't stop. You've never arrived. If you think you've arrived, you're in trouble. Okay? So you want to always go on. This particular teaching, or I'm going to call it a principle. Okay. You could call it a law, but laws can be created and they can be disobeyed and discarded or changed. But a principle is something you find within your own heart. It's something you can live up to. It's not something that you can manufacture or create. Okay. So this teaching or this principle, it wasn't unique to Reverend Master Jiyu. I think it's quite common in, our little branch of Zen, Soto Zen. I've seen it occasionally in other things, but I don't, I haven't spent time in other temples, so I can't really say for sure, but I see references. So I suspect that, it's a important teaching in other Zen temples and orders too. It ties in with what Reverend Master Jiyu called endless training. Okay. Again, always going on. There's an end to this, but that's not a negative thing. It's just an injunction to you want to go on. You want to go on. You want to go on. You hit hard spots, and you want to go on. And as she always said, don't forget the hail at the end. Okay, it's a positive going on. Okay, we're always becoming Buddha. So what I want to do this morning is focus on three things. One is just talk about a couple symbols or artwork in the environment here in the monastery. You'll see at other places. There are many places where symbols or artwork shows this idea. And I'm just going to mention a couple, and once you start looking for it, or at least be open to the possibility, you can see it many, many places. And then I'm going to talk about how the teaching was valuable to me in a couple tight spots. Okay. And then I'll talk about some of the ways that we can cultivate this principle in daily life so that it does become our default position. Okay. But there's always a choice. Okay. It's default, but it's always a choice. All right? One of the symbols we use to represent this is called a knot of eternity. It's that red knot up there on the proscenium arch. There's a couple on either side. There's smaller ones hanging from the lights, the big lights overhead. Okay? And it's called the knot of eternity or the knot of eternal love. It's usually represented without the little tassels coming down, and the tassels tie in together so that it makes, I don't know what the correct mathematical name for it is, but it's intersecting lines that doesn't have an end. It doesn't have a beginning. It goes on. It just continues to go on. All right? It's trying to express the love of the eternal, the compassion. That's why it's called sometimes the knot of eternal love. It's red. Okay? Red is the color of blood. As long as blood is flowing, and our body is red. Okay? It's alive. This is something alive here. Again, that ties into the going on. This isn't something that's accomplished or dead, but it's living. We also use the red color to represent the precepts. Okay? Sometimes we call it the blood of the Buddhas. It's not meant to be violent or gory, but it's again to represent that this is living. This is alive. As long as you make it, you have to keep it alive. It has to be alive for you. So that's one place you can, one symbol that you can sometimes see in different places. Some traditions use it more than others. It's used a lot in Tibetan Buddhism. It's one of what they call the 8 auspicious offerings or something like that. But the other symbol that we often use, but you may not see quite so much, is called a manji. Okay? It's the Chinese-Japanese character for movement. That's what man means, movement. And ji means character. So it's the character for movement. You probably know this more by its Indian name, which is the swastika. Okay. It unfortunately has often dreadful associations for people in the West because of the association with Nazi Germany and what happened there. It's said that Hitler actually took this Buddhist symbol and reversed it. Okay? Because there's two ways of looking at it. The way it's used in Buddhism, usually, is that it's turning to the right. Okay? It's to represent that we always want to try to go in the right direction, in the true direction. And Hitler reversed it. So it's turning to the left. So it's actually a really useful, if you know what you're looking at and know which side you're looking at it from, it can be really useful as a reminder, I want to keep things turning in the right direction, because when they turn in the other direction, gosh, look what happens. Okay. And sometimes it's hard to tell, but you should know that if you see it in any kind of Buddhist literature, whether it's turning to the left or turning to the right, it's to represent this turning, this movement. All right? Buddhism took this symbol from the Indian culture in which it grew up. However, it's found in many, many ancient civilizations. It pops up very early in different parts of the world, places that there's no way these people had any contact with each other. So why is it there? Where did they get the idea for this? One theory anthropologists use is that they give is that, sometime in prehistory there was a huge comet that was in the sky, probably for a long time. You could see it from everywhere in the world. And as you know, comets can appear to turn. They leave a spray of what we call stardust. It's actually meteor dust, but as it turns, it can leave these sprays, pulling behind it. So it could have been a huge comet shaped something like a cross, sometimes light It looks like a cross if you look at it. And it was turning, so each of the 4 points had a little tail on it. Okay? And the people, for some reason, intuitively perhaps, said, oh, that's a really good symbol for that which turns within our own hearts. Okay? And that's how we use it. How Buddhism uses it, that's how we use it, in our tradition. It's to represent the movement within our own hearts toward that which is good. Okay? It's alive, it's moving. And it's the meditation that keeps it moving. Okay, that's why the meditation is the foundation of what we do. And again, why it's always good to go on, to keep it up. If you find this practice speaks to something within you, try to keep it up. With some regularity. If you can only do once a week, well, do once a week. Make a commitment and try to keep that. And if you can extend that time or frequency, do that. And if this practice doesn't appeal to you, we'll find one that does. Because this isn't specific, to Buddhism. Other religions express it in different ways, and I'm not an expert on them, so I can't tell you how it does it. But this is how we talk about it, this is how we do it. It's to describe the movement of the heart in meditation. Sometimes, in some Buddha statues, you'll see there's a manji right on his breast. Okay? Again, it's to represent the turning of the heart. The reason why it's located right there. This one doesn't, but some do. Again, we don't tend to use it a lot because of the associations. And it can represent, sometimes that's called turning the wheel. It's giving, again, the sense of turning. The Buddha giving voice to the Dharma. Okay. We give voice to the Dharma when we follow the Dharma, when we turn the wheel within ourselves. So just a couple examples from my own life here at the monastery. My examples are from monastic life because that's where I've spent a lot of my life. And the kind of situations I describe I don't think are unique to monastic life. I think we each probably have our own version, or will have. So I think this is a universal principle that's helpful for all of us to keep in mind. At one point, as a novice monk, I was the head novice. That's your first position of responsibility in the monastery. Been here about, 3 or 4 years, and you're just following the schedule and doing what people tell you to do, and just working on yourself. And then you're given responsibility. Then you have to help other people with their training. You're the person people come to for advice. You're the one who's making decisions that affect the rest of the monastery. And I was having a pretty rough time. Just my own stuff I was working on. I wasn't well. I had some financial arrangements to be here that had collapsed. In those days, monks had to pay their own. We had to pay our own rent or room and board, and it was just the monastery was just very poor. We didn't have much support in those days. We had to even, buy the fabric to make our own robes. So you had to come with a certain amount of money in order to be here. Fortunately, we don't have to do that anymore. Okay. And then some monks would be here, and then they'd work outside the monastery occasionally, and I did that too. But in any case, I was standing right over there in the bathhouse, and it was time for me to pay my monthly rent. Okay. And I looked at my checkbook, and I said, I seem to have just enough to do this. And it was really hard to make that choice to go on, because everything looked pretty bleak, very bleak. But I did. I eventually said, I need to go on. This is, this opportunity may not come again. I need to go on. So I signed the check, and things worked out. I got some financial assistance. We eventually figured out what was going on with my health, and I finished the term, and Reverend Master Jiga said, "Well done," and so it was had a good ending. But it was the habit of always going on that helped me to know the importance of doing that and not giving up in a tight spot. Then there was another instance, a couple years later. I was coming up on the ordination age, monk age, where many monks are transmitted. That's kind of the next step up. I hate to call it rank because it doesn't have anything to do with power, and it doesn't have anything to do with the military associations that go with that, but it's the best word we've got. Your responsibility increases dramatically at that point. And I was looking around, the monks around me were getting transmitted and I wasn't, So then, of course, well, what's wrong with me? Why am I not getting? Why isn't this happening to me? What have I done that's wrong? What am I not doing? How we can start questioning ourselves when we see other people in a similar situation moving, quote, ahead, or forward, and we're not. And I was just sort of getting interested in other kinds of Buddhism and reading this and reading that. And it was a distraction, to be honest. And then finally I just said, no, I'm going to stop this. This tradition has everything that I need. It's all here. It's all sufficient. This master is perfectly adequate for me. She's perfect. I don't need anyone else. And I said, okay, I'm going to stay here and train. I don't care if I'm the eternal novice. I don't care if I ever get transmitted. I'm going to stay here and do the training. Okay, and just focus on this. Not look outside, just do this wholeheartedly. And make that commitment to my teacher. And then within a week, here she comes around and she says, well, would you like to be transmitted? How did she know? I hadn't told anybody this, but sometimes one's master senses things. So she had somehow got an intuitive sense that I had made this commitment. This is the way I read it. Made this commitment to the tradition and to her. And those are two things that are essential for being transmitted. And so I was. But, there was that moment where I had to decide to go on, to stop looking here and there and just focus on this and just go on, regardless of the consequences. Okay, it doesn't matter if I get credit or not. It doesn't matter if I advance. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to go on and do my training. Okay, this is what I can do. Those are two examples of when I stepped up to the plate and batted a home run, if you will. There were a lot other times when I didn't hit the ball at all. Struck out or completely, or only, hit 4 balls and you get on first base. So I can't pretend that this is something that I'm well accomplished at. It's something I still work on. Okay? For me, this is an important part of my training, is to always go on. I usually find when I've hit those situations, the crises, one of the things that, looking back, you see, you see what influenced your mind and what choices you might have made or how you may have handled it differently. And one of the things, when I look back and see, I failed to take refuge in other people. I somehow got myself in a hole thinking it was all up to me, and I didn't ask other people for their advice. Okay? And that's what we call the refuge of the Sangha. Okay? That's one of the ways we keep the turning going, the always going on, is to take refuge in the Sangha. And then another one is the precepts, particularly the 3 pure precepts. Am I ceasing from evil? Am I doing only good? Am I doing good for others? And if you get a no to any one of those, think again. Look again. And then we always have the refuge of the Buddha. And for me, that's the meditation. That's what's within my own heart, meditating what I sense is right and what is good to do. Okay. So there you have the 3 refuges. This is the way they come in, very valuable, in a practical way that can help you in your life. Another point I want to make about the times when I didn't move on, as later I wished I had, is to point out that training goes up and down. Again, you don't arrive. There isn't a point where all of a sudden everything becomes easy. You have to keep up the meditation. You have to keep up the training. All right? I find that in my life, the crises I've had in monastic life parallel the things that happened to me before I became a monk. Okay, it's exactly the same sorts of things. Same kind of situations. So if you start to meditate or decide to be a Buddhist or a monk, don't think all that stuff's just going to go away. Okay? It's going to continue. But you get a lot of help. That's the beauty of training and training with others, is you get an awful lot of help. It's still your decision. And no one's going to make that decision for you. No one's going to force you to make that decision. Again, the examples I gave, those were things I decided, okay. No one was forcing me. If I'd asked in those situations, I probably would have told, well, it's up to you. Okay. For whatever reason, those were situations where I needed to do this on my own. I was a bit of a, I guess, trying to be too perfect at one point in my life. I probably still am, as a monk. Asking for too much advice. People get tired of, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do that? And, eventually one might say, well, just go decide on your own. Stop asking other people. So it doesn't mean one becomes dependent on others. But there's a interaction, it's like fabric. You want to kind of keep that fabric together. So you have to always go on. There's a couple things right there. When you keep up the meditation, some regularity. Okay. You keep up the precepts. Keep the precepts in mind. Read over them occasionally. They're not for information. Okay, we have a number of different writings that include them, and read them with what I call an open heart. Some kind of sink in, be there, read it with a meditative state of mind. Not trying to hang on to anything, not trying to push it away, but just, it's like, I read something recently, someone said, it's like listening to music. You just kind of open yourself to it. So you've got the precepts. You've got the refuge in the Sangha, taking advice. And part of taking refuge in the Sangha is, coming to places like this. Or if there's a temple or priory near you, you can go there. And if you can, make a regular habit of it. It helps keep the momentum up. That doesn't mean that you have to be there every Sunday. Maybe you live very far from the monastery or the temple. Maybe you're sick a lot. Maybe you have children who, have violin lessons on Sundays, or there's always something. But you try. It's your intention to be there as much as you can. But I'm sure you all lead very busy lives. It seems like things just get busier and busier. So I think in some ways you have to work harder to carve out a little time for meditation, carve out a little time to get to the temple or the monastery. And when you're at the monastery, try, or at least be open to what's being taught, not just in the talks and lectures, but in the structure, in the architecture, in how people relate to each other. Our schedule is pretty rigorous. Okay? It's set up that way intentionally to help us move on. Okay. We eat lunch, we do kitchen cleanup, we rest, and then we get up and we do, it just goes on that way all through the day. Even our rest days are like that. There's a schedule we follow. It's to help us not get stuck, to always move on, to always go on. Anyway, there's a number of things like that if you begin to look and be here, and begin to experience that for yourself and see what you can learn from that. One point I want to make is that this going on is not insisting on your own way. It's not, I want it my way. We have a phrase for that. We sometimes call it storming heaven. Right? There has to be flexibility there. There has to be humility. There has to be openness and a positive mind. Life is probably not going to present all of us with exactly what we want. Okay? But we always have a choice to turn toward the good. We always have a choice to keep the precepts. Okay? We always have a choice to go on in a spiritual direction, a movement of the heart. Okay? No matter what happens, we have that choice. Sometimes that choice goes against the conventions of a society or your family. You may have to do something that nobody else agrees with you. And at times like that, always going on seems like going upstream. It's really hard. And you have to take courage to do that. And the bottom line is, at the end of the day, can you lie down to sleep and be at peace? At the end of your life, can you lie there and not have deep regrets? You did the best you could. You tried to turn things in the right direction, even in a difficult situation where things didn't work out, or you had to do something that was you really didn't want to, but it was the best choice. You turn things in the right direction. Okay? And that's what Buddhism can offer us. That's what meditation can offer us. Okay? This peace of the heart, it's not dependent on circumstances. We sometimes actually call it the flow, always going on, the movement, the flow. Let's flow with a capital F. That's not like, oh, man, just go with the flow. Because sometimes the flow, we have to go upstream. But it's another way of expressing this idea of always moving on in a spiritual direction, in the movement of the heart. And when I say heart, you probably all know this, I'm not talking about the emotional heart. It's one of those words that, when it's translated, it's kind of bigger than any one English word can contain. Sometimes it's called the heart-mind. It's not the intellectual mind. Okay, it's something that encompasses both. So if you will, it's heart, the capital H, or the Buddha nature. We're trying to live from our Buddha nature to the best of our abilities. And we're human. We're going to, try and fall down. That's just, that's the breaks. That's what happens. That's life. There's a Japanese saying, 6 times down, 7 times up. Okay? No matter how many times you fall, you get back up. And that's another part of going on. When you've fallen down dramatically, you have to start over. It seems like you're starting over. It can take an enormous amount of willpower to go on, to try again. But it's there within you. You can do it. You can do it. And you're relying on something deeper than yourself. You're relying on a deeper purpose in your life than just to get a job or have a family or whatever it is. Even within ideals, we want to stay true to our purpose, which is, saving the environment. Well, there's different ways to go about that, and how you move within that, how you participate in that, the choices that you make, has an effect on you. And things might not go in a direction we would like. Okay. I hope we won't lose the battle to save the earth. We may lose some more wilderness areas. I don't know. But we want to know that we've moved in a good direction. We haven't acted on violence. We haven't acted on hatred. We haven't acted on dislike, on other negative emotions, because that's the stuff that clogs up the heart. That's the thing that keeps the wheel from turning. So whatever we do, whatever aim we have, we try to see the spiritual purpose in what we're doing. Okay, there's a spiritual heart purpose to whatever we're doing. Washing dishes, raising a child, having a family. But we always try to keep this deeper purpose in mind. Okay? We try to always go on. Always come back to that and always go on. So I'm going to close there. Thank you all for being here this morning and spending time. And may you all have a good day. Our retreatants have a safe trip home. And I think we're going to have a sunny day. So just enjoy that. Thank you for being here.